Hello friends, happy Tuesday and happy first full day of spring. This is Lena Gersa. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, and it's time for another episode of Tuesday Live at 5. Now, today I am all about spring and celebrating the fact that winter is finally behind us, at least according to the calendar anyway, and we are celebrating the return of the birds and the return of warmth and sunshine and spring flowers and green. So we are all about the Nested Friends bundle from the Stampin' Up! January to April mini catalog. Now, this is a bundle that you may have bypassed. We have lots of other bird imagery and bundles in the annual catalog, and we've had some in the past, but I have to say this is probably the first one that I've actually bought. I love our birds and the imagery in bird imagery in our stamp sets in the annual catalog, but I've never actually purchased one, which is kind of crazy. But this was one I just absolutely love the artwork in this, and I really love the dies. So I'm going to show you both the stamps and the dies. We're going to be using them today to create 3 cards. I have a kind of neat fun fold to share with you, and I'm hoping that you will enjoy them. All right, so let me see who is here. Let's pull this up here. I'm wrapped up in a warm wrap. It is freezing in my studio. It's a nice, warm, mild and sunny day outside, but my studio is freezing. Hi, Pam. Hi, Laura. Hi, other Laura. Hi, Krista. Hi, Jean. Welcome. Yes, it is really cold in my studio. I don't know whether my husband turned the heat down because he saw it was going to be mild today and just thought, okay, well, we don't need to have heat in the house. I don't know, but I got home and it was cold. So I'm hoping that the furnace is actually functional. I didn't actually check it because I had to come down here and get ready to go. But I have my space heater running beside me. I have my cozy Stampin' Up! Wrap, and hopefully that will keep me going through this video. So I'm going to flip the camera. We're going to stop talking. I'm going to show you the bundle, and then we're going to get to some stamping. Okay, so here we go. Try and get this centered and straight. That doesn't look too bad. There we go. We'll get my lamp out of the way. You can see my wrap hanging. I am wrapped up cozy. I feel like it's the dead of winter. I'm going to slide this a little bit, I think, so it's better centered. All right, so here is our bundle in the catalog. It's on page 25. It's fairly easy to miss because it doesn't get a ton of real estate. We've only got 3 samples in the catalog to showcase it, which I feel doesn't quite do enough to show this fantastic bundle. So I'm going to show you the bundle, and then we're going to get to stamping. So let's get this out of the way. Here is the bundle. You know what really sold me on this set is this beautiful nest stamp. I just think that is such a gorgeously detailed image. Stampin' Up! Is known for their beautifully detailed images and their stamps. And this is one that is just, you know it's a Stampin' Up! Stamp because it's just such a beautiful image. And of course our little bird and our branch. Spatters, you know, you had me at spatter. And then some fantastic sentiment. So there's our stamp set. We have our coordinating dies, open dies to cut out some of the stamped imagery. But then we also have dies that cut a nest. We've got little leaves and some eggs. You're going to see those all in action today. And I've got some tips for using these little bitty leaves. So here we go. Let's get to it. So the first card we're going to make today is this one. I posted this yesterday, and this is kind of a cool way to color this image. So I didn't actually use Stampin' Blends. I used something else, so I will show you in just a sec. How's that for a teaser for you? So we're starting with a piece of Crumb Cake cardstock. It is, let me just make sure this is right side up. That's better. It is 5 1/4 by 4 inches, and I have run it through with the Time Worn Type embossing folder. Okay. Now I wanted this to be a relatively quick card, so I resisted the urge to do any more distressing or ink blending on here. I kept it as simple as I possibly could. So that is our background. Then I pulled out some of my Color Family 6x6 DSP. So this is Mossy Meadow. It's from the Neutrals pack, and I've cut this to 3 by 5 1/4. So it's essentially half a sheet of a 6x6 piece of DSP. The back side has the flowers, but we're going to stick with the stripes. I wanted it to be a little bit more masculine. So we're going to glue that down and center it. Oh, you agree with me, do you, Jean? Yeah, the nest is what sold me on this set. I think it's just such a pretty image. Hi, Linda. Hi, Kathy. How are you? All right, so we're going to go ahead and center this. So because this is 3 inches wide, I have a 1/2 inch border at the top and bottom, which works out rather nicely. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and adhere that to a Mossy Meadow card base, 5.5 by 8.5, scored in the middle at 4.25. So we'll go ahead and fold that in half along our score line. And we'll add a little bit of adhesive. Now I got to go slow. I find the time-worn type embossing folder is especially bad for causing my cardstock to separate when I am using my seal. So you just want to take your time when you're applying your seal, and we're going to make sure we get our words and our time-worn type up, right side up. Not that I think anybody would notice, but it would bug me. So there we go. All right, so there is our card base. Now, let me talk to you for a minute about the coloring of these images. So to start, I stamped my nest, my bird, and my branch, as you can see, on basic white cardstock using early espresso ink. Okay. Then I came in with, do you remember these? We still sell these, you know. These are our blender pens. And I actually used to use these all the time. And then when we got Stampin' Blends, they barely see the light of day. And I don't know why, because they're fantastic and they're a great way to quickly color a stamped image. Now, this works best if you are stamping in classic ink. If you stamp in, for example, a Memento Black or any alcohol-based ink, these will not be effective, okay? But essentially, our blender pens are just, they have a clear liquid in here that, and I don't even know what it is, doesn't say. Acid-free, xylene-free, so it's good for scrapbooking. But it's got some kind of cool, clear liquid in here that helps us to blend our water-based ink. So that's all I did to color my nest. So I stamped an early espresso, and then I just used my blender pen to pull the color from the stamped image out to fill in my nest. So I'll show you what that looks like on my branch here. Now, I stamped this yesterday, so the ink is going to be a little bit drier than it was when I did this one. So I'm going to just, you can see how it's filling in. So there's no color on here, okay? It's stained, but there's no color in my blender pen tip. And I'm just running it across that stamped image, and it's picking up that early espresso ink that I've stamped with and allowing me to fill in my image. So this is a really quick and easy way to fill in your stamped images that are stamped with classic ink. Okay, now just a caveat with this, you don't want to do a lot of blending and kind of scrubbing back and forth because we are stamping on just regular basic white cardstock, and over time the liquid that is in this pen will cause that cardstock to pill. Okay, so we don't want to apply so much liquid that it causes it to pill, but enough that it is going to blend out our ink. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of get rid of the ink that's on there, and you can see there's nothing really on my grid paper. I'm going to take my other end. This is the end that I was using to color the leaves. Now, here's another way that we can use these. I don't want my leaves to be brown, obviously. We want a spring tree, not a fall tree. Okay, Jean says it's glycerin mixed with something. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Jean. I just think it's magical liquid. We'll just go with that. So I have here my old olive ink pad. Now, this is not something that you want to do a whole lot. However, I like to just use the very corner of my ink pad with my blender pen, pick up a little bit of color, and then fill in my leaves. So pick up a little color, fill in my leaf. So you want to make sure you do pick up that color, because if you just start coloring your leaf, you're going to have brown leaves, right? So we need to make sure we pick up a little bit of green ink as we go. Now, another way to do this is to squish your ink pad so that you get some ink in the lid and pick up your ink that way if you're worried about damaging the foam. But I have been doing just the corners for years, and my pads have lived to tell about it. So it's kind of up to you what your comfort level is. I find I get more ink and I can get a little bit more variation in color when I can apply or grab the ink directly from the corner of the pad. So I'm just going to come in here and fill in the rest of the leaves. So it's literally just a little touch of my pen to the pad. I'm not picking up a lot of ink from the pad. You certainly, if you have the re-inkers, could also just put a drop of re-inker on an acrylic block and use that as your palette to pick up your color. But there you go. How quick and easy was that to color? Okay, so the lowly blender pen has been given new life in my studio. I'm going to use that more. And this image is just perfect to color with the blender pen. Okay, did the same thing with my bird. Stamped in early espresso, blended the feathers out, and then the belly, his tummy, I just used a little bit of crumb cake with my blender pen. Okay, so that's all there is to it. So to assemble this, we're going to bring back our card here. I'm going to go ahead and adhere my branch to my nest. Okay, so the branch looks like it's kind of built on the nest. I'm just going to put, or nest is built on the branch. The branch is not built on the nest. Okay, so I put a little bit of seal on there. We're going to go ahead and adhere that. Okay, and then that is going to get popped up on the front of our card right about there. So we'll just add a little bit of, a couple of dimensionals. Hi, Louise. Hi, Sharon. Welcome. I hope it's as nice and sunny and warm in Winnipeg today as it is here. I wouldn't go as far as say it's warm. It's mild. It certainly is not snowing and blowing and freezing like it has been for most of March. So I am quite thankful for the sunshine today. I did wear my jacket coming out from work, but I didn't zip it up. So there you go. It's that kind of weather. It's need a jacket, but don't need to zip kind of weather. So I'm just adding a couple of mini dimensionals to the backs of my branch here, just so that it adheres securely. So we'll get rid of our backings. And my hands are so cold, I'm having a hard time picking up my dimensional backings. Got a little bit of seal on there. Okay, so here we go. We're going to pop this on right about there. Okay, then we're going to add our sweet little bird. And he's going to be kind of perched on one of the branches. So I'm just going to add a mini dimensional behind his head. Right up here. Actually, I'll probably put two. Just kind of there. And then I'm going to add just a smidge of seal to the tail. And that is going to secure him quite nicely. You see how cold my fingers are? I'm dropping everything. There we go. There is our sweet little birdie. Okay. Now to stamp our sentiment, I have just a 1/2 inch strip. This is just some scrap when I cut down my layers of basic white. I think it's 4 by 1/2 inch. And I'm going to bring in my Early Espresso ink pad and my Always Thinking of You stamp. So we're going to ink that up, and I'm just going to stamp just centered on this little strip. So those little scraps are really, really handy for making little banners and labels for your sentiments on your card. Okay, and then to create the decorative end on this, I'm going to use, cannot tell you the name of this, it's in the mini. Hold on, let me look it up because that's going to bug you now. What's it called? It's a Pick-a-Punch. It is the Happy Labels Pick-a-Punch. There we go. Oh, there it is on the side of my punch. Okay, yeah, all right, so we're going to use, there's two different finishes here. We're going to use the finer one just because this is a narrow little piece. So I'm going to slide my 1/2 inch strip in all the way, and I like to actually flip this over to make sure it's straight. You can see where your cardstock is there, and then we're just going to punch that. Okay, and then I'm going to flip it around. You know what, this is actually a little on the long side. We're going to trim this down a little bit. Otherwise, it's going to be too long on the front of our card. Let's just trim a bit off, and then we'll do that again. So here we go. Pop that in there. Make sure it's straight, and nip that end. And then same thing on the other end. There we go. Okay, there is our little banner. Super quick and easy. All right, now before we glue this on, we're going to add a little bow. So this is from our Basics Baker's Twine. This is the Crumb Cake. This is actually a little bit of scrap that I had left over from something else. So I'm just going to tie a little bow, not too little. I want my loops to be visible behind my label here. So there we go. And then I'm just going to take the end of my tag and I'm going to press it into a glue dot. So this is on the left end of my tag here, and then I'm just going to take and press that onto the knot of my bow. Okay, so it's an easy way to attach that. Then I can go ahead and trim off the excess. We'll flip that over and add a couple of dimensionals. So 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll get rid of our backings. Again, my fingers do not want to function today. I need to warm up. All right, so we're going to pop this on. And the nice thing about this DSP is it has stripes, so it helps you to get your pieces straight. So there we go. Okay, a couple of embellishments. These are from the annual catalog. Once again, cannot remember the name of them. Somebody can look them up. They've got the Polished Pink, there's Pool Party, and we've got Mossy Meadow. So we're going to use a couple of these to add a little bit of bling to our card, because even though I was going for a masculine look, boys like bling, right? Sure they do. All right, so there is our finished card. Now on the inside, I added a basic white layer, stamped the nest again, colored it in the same way, okay, and then added a sentiment. So there we go. Done and done. Really easy and quick masculine card idea. All right, let's move on, clean up my mess here. And here we go with number 2. So this is the one I posted earlier today, and this one features those awesome dies. Okay, so this one, I'm going to show you how I did this, but I'll also have to do some explaining because I've done some of it ahead of time. But let's pull out our bits and pieces and then we'll see where we go from there. So I need my little eggs. So to start, I'll just kind of start with the pieces as they fall out. So to do my little eggs, I just took a little scrap of Very Vanilla cardstock. Okay, I applied just a very little bit of Crumb Cake ink using my blender brush, and then stamped my spatters using Early Espresso and Stamped Off. Okay, and then I die cut, and I got my 3 little speckled eggs. Okay, now here is this fabulous nest die. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this. So when we use the dies, let me just show you the leaf dies for a minute. So these leaves can look really fussy. In fact, when I first saw them, I'm like, oh, okay, not working with those. I've got a couple of tips for you. So first of all, you cut 3 leaves with 1 die. Okay, so I cut all of these with 1 pass through the machine. All right, so you get a ton without a lot of effort. Secondly, they're in different sizes. So you have 2 sets of larger leaves and 2 sets of smaller leaves. All right, so I'm going to show you how we're going to use these in a way that's not super fussy. So before we get to our leaves, we have our 2 nests. So we have one that is sort of a more solid embossed look. Okay, looks like that. And then we have one that is a detail, looks like twigs. Okay, so we're going to layer those, but I wanted to get a little bit more dimension as I layered. So we're going to bring in our Crumb Cake ink. My linen thread really wants to be in the way today. And I'm going to use my blender brush with a little bit of Crumb Cake ink. Now you'll notice I've left this detail die cut on the backing just because it's easier to maneuver with a larger piece of cardstock when you're using your blender brush. In fact, if I weren't doing this in a live, I actually did this ahead of time. So I actually added my ink to my Crumb Cake cardstock first and then die cut. But I wanted to show you guys how to do that, so that's why I did it this way. So I picked up a little bit of ink. I'm just going to come in with my brush and apply a little bit of Crumb Cake ink to that die cut. Okay, so you can see how this is much easier when we're on a larger piece than if you're trying to add ink to these little fine twigs. Okay, so we're just adding a little bit of ink to darken that down. So can you see the difference in color? Okay, and that's going to give us the contrast and dimension on our nest. Whoops, just put my finger right in the ink pad. Okay, so I have used adhesive sheets on the back of this. Okay, that is crucial to this little tip I'm going to give you. Okay, so you'll notice that I've added the little leaves to my nest. So the nest looks like it's sort of nestled in amongst the leaves on a tree. And trying to glue these individual little guys is a major pain in the butt. So here is an easy little tip. So I'm going to first of all pull this out of my backing. We're going to go ahead and layer that over our solid nest die cut. Okay. Then I'm going to just take my leaves and kind of lay them out on my grid paper. Come on. And what I'm going to do is just take and layer that die cut piece or the die cut twig over top, press, and they're going to stick. Is that not ingenious? So easy to adhere these little leaves when you don't have to fuss with little tiny dabs of liquid glue and getting glue all over your fingers and then having the leaves stick to your fingers because they're all gluey. This is the easiest, quickest way to add leaves to your nest. But the key is adhesive sheets, okay? You got to use adhesive sheets for this to work. Otherwise, you're going to be applying liquid glue to all of these little bitty leaf die cuts, and you're going to curse me saying, why did she convince me to buy this bundle? This is why, because it's cute. Okay, but this is a great way to use these die cuts, these little leaf dies, without causing yourself a whole bunch of stress and frustration. So I'm just going to finish adding my leaves here. And we need a couple down the bottom. Let's see. I'm going to actually grab one of these. Let's see, this is stuck to the seal that I had on my grid paper from earlier. I'm going to stick this guy on here. And then I'm going to take one of these. I'm actually going to tuck it in underneath my layer here just to get one kind of, a little bit of color down the bottom. Just like that. And pinch that back down. And then one more. Just like that. And there we go. We have a nest nestled amongst the leaves. Okay, so there's our nest. Now we're going to add our eggs after. I'm just going to set this aside, and we're going to do a little bit of work on our, oh, there's one more leaf. That's okay. We're going to do a little bit of work on our card base. Okay, so our card base is just plain old Crumb Cake cardstock. It's 5.5 by 8.5, scored in the middle at 4 1/4. Okay, so we'll just fold that in half. Same dimensions as our last card, but this one is going to be a portrait orientation. All right, and then I'm going to come in with this fabulous nest stamp and my Crumb Cake ink once again. Okay, so we're going to just do some random stamping on this to add some texture to our card base. Now, I find when I have a large stamp, I like to bring my ink pad to the stamp rather than the other way around. Okay, and that way I just make sure that I'm getting good coverage, and I find I need to make sure I really get the center of that nest because it's so detailed. You just want to make sure you've got really good coverage on your stamp. See? Now that's not going to show too much, but that's what I mean. I should see I'm talking and stamping. Never a good combination for me. We'll add another one here. And a couple more. We'll do one down here on the corner. Make sure we get that really well covered. And we'll do a little bit down here. Okay, I'm going to do one up in that top corner here too. Just get the bottom of this image here. There we go. Okay, so a really simple way to add quick texture to the background. That's not going to be super obvious because most of it is going to be covered, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. So over that, we are going to go ahead and layer. This is a little bit of Texture Chic DSP from the annual catalog. I love this sort of rustic barn board pattern. And it's got a lot of Evening Evergreen, which is one of our outgoing in colors that I'm very much hoping comes back as part of the color refresh. I don't think I can keep going without Evening Evergreen if it doesn't come back. So this is cut to 2 3/4 by 4. Okay, and then we have an Evening Evergreen cardstock mat that is going to be 2 7/8 by 4 1/8. Okay, so we'll go ahead and layer those. And we'll pop that on. Oh, you guys like my little leaf trick? I've been too busy stamping. I haven't been watching comments. I'm glad you like it. It was, as soon as I saw those little leaves, I'm like, okay, there's got to be an easier way to maneuver these because putting glue on all those little things is going to drive me absolutely batty. So there we go. So we're going to go ahead and glue our DSP panel to the front of our card. And you see that that faded image doesn't really even, it's not even noticeable. So let's add a little bit of seal after I unstick my scraps of twine. So we'll go ahead and add that. Centered on the front of our card. Right about there. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and add our nest. So I'm going to add a couple of dimensionals to the back. I might have to trim some edge of my dimensionals because I'm almost out with this pack. Or this sheet rather. So we'll do that. Okay, I don't find I needed to add any dimensionals to the back of the leaves. If that's something that concerns you, you certainly could spend some time cutting down dimensionals to add those. but I'm not concerned enough to take the time to do that. So there we go. There's our nest. Okay, now to add our little eggs, we're going to just use a glue dot. So what I'd like to do is just kind of press each little egg onto a glue dot, and then I rip off the strip so that they're easy to maneuver. And then I just take my take your pick, pick them up and stick them down. So 1 and 2 and 3. And there's our sweet little eggs. Okay. All right. Now, where'd my little bird go? He's here somewhere. Where'd you go, birdie? Oh, he's on the floor. Wearing this wrap causes me to sweep things onto the floor. So our little bird is just going to be perched on the edge of the nest. Okay. Kind of standing watch over its eggs. So we are going to add a couple of dimensionals to the back of our little birdie here. I'm using minis just because I'm out of big ones. So we'll go ahead and add that, and it's just going to perch in just on the edge of the nest there like that. Okay, now to stamp our sentiment, we have a deckled rectangle. So these dies are ones that, again, are easily overlooked in the annual catalog. I love this sort of rough look that we get when we die cut these rectangles. So this is the smallest rectangle. It's cut from Very Vanilla cardstock. And we are going to go ahead and stamp our sentiment in a little bit of early espresso ink. So we'll ink that up, make sure we're well inked, and stamp that, hopefully straight. Not too bad. Okay, and then when I put that on, I felt like it was a little bit too stark. It was a little bit too, like, bright. Look at, I'm putting my fingers in on the ink today, like crazy. I never do that. All right, so to add just a subtle little bit of color, just to dull down the brightness of that, I'm not even going to pick up more ink. I'm just going to use whatever Crumb Cake ink is left in my blender brush here and just kind of flick around the edges. I don't want to add a lot, but just enough just to take some of that brightness off of that vanilla cardstock. Okay, so it just looks a little bit distressed, not super dark, but just enough. Okay, now we're going to turn that over and add a couple strips of seal, and then I'm going to bring in my linen thread. I'm going to pinch it between my fingers, and I'm going to wrap it around all 4 fingers. I'm probably going to go do, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. Okay, we'll trim that off. I'm going to slide my loop off, and then I'm going to pinch it in the middle and twist it. And then we're going to go ahead and stick that on the back of our label and arrange our loops so that they're not quite so neat and tidy. You want them to look a little bit messy. Okay, and that, I did it the opposite direction from my sample, but it doesn't matter. That gives us a really quick and easy way to add a little bit of texture to our label. Okay, so we're going to add a couple of dimensionals or edges of the dimensional sheet, as the case may be. So we'll just pop these on along the edges there. Oh, there's one more dimensional. That's perfect. We'll put that guy down here. And again, we'll get rid of our backings and pop that on to the front of our card. Just like that. There we go. Done and done. You like that one? Now on the inside of this one, I kept it super simple because I figured this could be used for anything, right? I could send this to someone who's having a rough time. I could send this for a birthday. I could use it for anything. So I like having cards that are blank inside that can be used for any occasion. So again, I just took a little bit of Crumb Cake ink to dull down the corner of my Very Vanilla cardstock, stamped my nest image in Crumb Cake this time, and added some spatters. Super quick and easy. All right. So there we go. Number 2. Yeah, it really does soften the look, right? So it's not quite so bright vanilla. That's what when I went to put it on there, I was like, whew, that's a little too bright. So there we go. All right, time for a fun fold. So I have an event once a month with my team called Sunday Stamp and Share. And this week I was working on the projects for this week's feature product. So using this bundle. And I wanted to do a fun fold and I couldn't find anything. So I was scrolling through Instagram and I found somebody who had done a really cool fun fold. But I couldn't find any instructions. So I just kind of sat and figured it out. So this is a diamond easel or you could even call it a book fold, because it is the same basic idea as a book fold, but it's an easel card that stands up like that. Isn't that cute? How sweet would that be sitting on somebody's mantle or desk or table for spring? Is that not just the cutest? So it folds flat, okay, but it's got that same book fold idea. So I'm going to show you how to do this. It's not hard, okay? I figured this out in an hour, less than an hour, while I was hanging out with some of my team members. So let me show you what we're going to do. Did that just, there we go. I just turned down my lamp. All right. So we have some gray granite cardstock, okay? 4 1/4 by 11. So no fancy measurements here. All like half a sheet of cardstock, no extra, no waste, no nothing. All right. So we're going to start, I'm going to go this way. So we scored, that's the word. Holy cow, you guys. We scored at 2 1/8, 4 1/4, and 5 1/2. So 5 1/2 is halfway, right? That's your regular score line on this orientation. So here we're scoring at 2 1/8 and 4 1/4. I will put these measurements up afterwards, okay? So you don't have to worry about writing them down. So there's one other little thing that we need to do. So I'm going to bring in a pencil, and on this end, so we've got our 3 score lines, 1, 2, 3. We need to mark the center going across this bottom edge. Okay, so this is 4 1/4 inches wide, so the center would be at 2 1/8. Yes, this is a math test. Okay, so we're going to put just a little tick mark at that 2 1/8 mark. Okay, so then I'm going to bring in my trimmer. I'm going to make sure I'm using my scoring blade, and only my scoring blade. And I am going to line up that little tick mark at the bottom and this first score line. So I'm going to score on the diagonal this way. Okay, so there's my tick mark. There's my score line. You probably can't see the score line especially well on the camera, but take my word for it. So there's the first score line. There's my tick mark. Close, score. Okay, so now you can see I've got a score line that runs from the center on that bottom edge up on the diagonal to that first score line there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing, going the opposite direction. So line up my tick mark, line up my score line, and score. Okay, so now I have this V scored at the bottom. That's all there is to this. It's that easy, you guys. Like, really. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start folding. So I'm going to start with my center. Okay, so I'm just going to fold it in half like I normally would on any other card base. We'll crisp that up with our bone folder. Okay, so here are my score lines on the front. This next score line down from the top, I'm going to fold away from me. I'm going to fold it upwards. Okay, this next one, I'm going to fold towards me. Okay, so when I look at it from the side, I have an M. All right, now we're going to take these diagonal score lines. I'm going to open this back up just so that you can see a bit easier. And we are going to fold each one in towards the center. So I'm going to fold this way. And you're going to find that this edge, when I fold it up, lines up with that score line. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing on this side, fold it inward. So this is kind of like the envelope card that we made a couple of weeks ago. Similar kind of concept. Okay, so that, as you can see, is going to create our easel base. All right, how easy was that? It's pretty easy, right? Okay, so we're going to start by gluing these flaps. Now, if you really wanted to, if you wanted to make a pocket and leave this as a pocket to tuck something in, you certainly could. You don't have to glue these down. I just did because I wasn't really concerned about making a pocket, but you certainly could leave that if you want to tuck a gift card in there or something. Totally, whoops, dimensional backing. Totally could do that. Okay, so we're just going to add a bit of seal to these flaps. I put a little bit in the middle too because I want this to stay good and stuck. Okay, I'm not concerned. Can you see how that doesn't quite match up perfectly? Does not matter. We're not going to see that. Okay, so that is my easel base. All right, now we're going to add some layers because, you know, I'm me and layers are good. So here we go. So we're going to first work on our background pieces here. My DSP is all from the Sun Prints DSP pack. Okay, so we have sort of a narrower section and a wider section. So my narrower section, let me just figure this out. This is 1 1/2. So this is 1 1/4. Okay, so it's 1 1/4 this way by 4. Again, I will put these measurements up afterwards. And then I have a basic white mat to put behind it. You don't have to mat it. You certainly could do it without. Okay, I just like the way that the white makes the DSP pop. That's just me. So this is cut to 1 3/8 by 4 1/8. Okay, so we're going to layer those. So we'll start by layering my DSP onto my cardstock. I gotta rub that seal that's on my grid paper off because everything is sticking to it. We'll fix that in a sec. Where is it? There it is. Let's get rid of that. There we go. Now I don't have sticky grid paper. Okay, so there is our first one. And then our second one, this one is cut to 1 5/8 by 4. Yes. And so this one is going to be 1 3/4 by 4 1/8. Okay, so again, we'll add a little bit of adhesive, layer this on there. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and glue these onto our panels here. Okay, now this DSP does have a very subtle script pattern, so if it matters to you, you want to make sure you get your words right side up. Just pay attention to that. So our narrower panel goes at the top. Okay, and then the wider one is going to go on that middle section. And again, I just want to take the time to line up the edges, especially of the white mat. I want them to be nice and even on both sides, so that it looks like, it gives the illusion of a continuous piece. Okay, so that's gonna go like that. Alrighty, let's work on our focal image. So our focal image to start, I have, this measurement is 3 inches. So I've cut a 3-inch square of basic gray cardstock, not basic gray, gray granite. Did I say this was basic gray? It's gray granite, you guys. So that is going to go on there. We're not gonna glue that on yet, but that is what I'm building on. So a 3-inch square of gray granite, okay? Then I have a die cut stitched square from the Stylish Shapes dies. This is the largest square, and it measures about 2 3/4 square. Okay, so again, you certainly could mat it just like that. It would look just fine. However, I like the white layer to make it pop. So this is cut to 2 7/8 square. Okay, so we're just gonna layer all of those. So we'll go DSP on white. That nicely centered, and then we're going to go white onto gray granite. There we go. I'll pop that on. What I love about gray granite for this is it's kind of a brown gray, right? Gray granite is has a fair bit of brown in it. It reminds me kind of a dove gray, like a you know, if you look at a mourning dove, which are back, they are around. That's what, almost the color of them. All right, so this is going to end up getting glued onto there. Okay, we're not going to do it quite yet because we're going to add our stamped images. So for my nest this time, I stamped in the gray granite ink, and then I colored my nest using light Crumb Cake Stampin' Blends. Okay, so I love, again, because the gray granite has that brown undertone, the Crumb Cake works really, really well with it. Okay, my leaves are colored with light Old Olive. Okay, so we're gonna pop that up on our little diamond here. So again, I'm using my scripts from my dimensional sheet. Tough times when Lena runs out of dimensionals. All right, so we're gonna pop this on because this is going to go in a diamond orientation. I feel like the nest just sort of nestles quite nicely in the bottom of the point of the diamond there. So we'll get rid of our backings and pop that on. Okay, and then we have our little bird, our little dove, that is going to perch sort of just on the edge of the nest here. And again, I'm going to add a couple of mini dimensionals to the back of my dove. And we'll pop that on. So that's going to just kind of sit right about there. Okay. I feel like that needs a little smidge of glue on the tail just to make sure the tail stays put. So we'll just add a little divvy-dab of glue there. There we go. Now I should mention I colored my dove with the light gray granite blends. Okay, so stamped in gray granite, colored in gray granite, and then the beak I use light so saffron, just add a little bit of yellow. Okay, to add my eggs, again, we're going to use our glue dot trick because they are much easier to maneuver this way. So we just stick each one onto a glue dot and then rip off the strip and then pick them up with our take your pick. Now it's going to be upside down, so we'll put this guy on first. And 2. And put this one on this way. 3. There we go. There is our nest full of eggs with our mama bird. And then to add our sentiment, this is a new set of dies. So I've used this a couple of times since they came out. These are the Radiating Stitches dies from the online exclusives. Okay, so you won't find these in any catalog. They're on my online store. So if you go to my online store and check out online exclusives, you will see these dies. And they're just the bomb. I love them. A little bit different than our other stitch dies. And so I'm going to stamp my birthday wishes sentiment in gray granite ink. So we'll go ahead and add, I gotta pull this closer to me, sorry you guys if this is out of range of the camera. There we go. And I'm going to add just a little bit of seal to the back, and we're just gonna tuck it there in behind our bird and our nest. So it's just gonna kind of tuck in there like that. And I do wanna make sure it's straight when my diamond is straight up and down, okay? And then that is going to get glued onto there. We're not going to glue it on just yet. We're going to add a little bit of ribbon to this section. So I have here, this is this gorgeous linen look. This is also from the annual. Can't remember the name of the ribbon right now. It is gorgeous. I love it. This is just a bit of scrap I had left over. So I'm going to just take and tie a knot. Okay, this ribbon is quite wide and it can be a little bit hard to figure out how to use it on a card. Certainly a bow would be overpowering because this ribbon is quite wide. It's great for packaging and adorning gifts, but tying a bow would be too much on this card. So I'm just tying a nice little square knot, and I'm going to adhere the knot on my little, this is the spine part of what's going to be my book fold. So we're just going to center that. And again, I'm just kind of looking at the point on my diamond because I kind of want those to line up, right? So there we go. Then we're going to trim off our excess. We don't need all of this length. So I'll get rid of that. I think my ribbon scissors need to be sharpened. Maybe a gift I give to myself before too long. So we're going to go ahead and add just a couple more glue dots to the back of our ribbon on each end. And then we're going to wrap it around and adhere it to the inside. So we're just going to take this, open this up, and wrap that around and stick it down, just like that. So it's nice and secure. Okay. Now we're going to apply some adhesive to this section to glue it down. Now I actually used some tear and tape for this, just because with all the ribbon there, I was finding that it wasn't staying stuck especially well, even with the seal. So I'm just going to take some tear and tape. I'm going to run a couple of strips along this panel here, this section. I'm going to go right over top of my, whoops, let's not have it showing. There we go. Right over top of my ribbon, okay? And when you're working with tear and tape, the backing is the hardest part. So I like to use my take your pick to grab my backing and peel it off, especially when I am teaching guitar and I have no nails. Come on. There we go. And one more. Just make sure that's nice and secure before we try and peel it off. Otherwise you end up peeling the whole thing off rather than just the backing. And then we're just going to fold that shut and burnish it really well. Okay, and that is not going anywhere. All right, so that when we are manipulating our easel, that is going to stay put. Okay. All right, sorry, I'm knocking lamps and everything all over the place here. So we're going to go ahead and add our focal image. So we're going to just put glue on this sort of pocket section. Okay, we're not putting it anywhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little liquid glue. You could use tear and tape or seal. Whatever works, doesn't really matter on this part. So I'm going to line up the edges of my gray granite square with the bottom point here and my score line on either side. Just want to make sure that that's nice and square and straight. Okay, and that is going to give us our easel. Isn't that cool? All right, now to finish this off, I have a piece of basic white cardstock. So this is for the inside. This is cut to 4 1/8 by 3 7/8. Okay, so 4 1/8 by 3 7/8. We're going to go ahead and glue this down inside our card. So we're going to pop that in there. We're going to have a nice narrow border, which when we close it, you see how it's the same width as our mat. That's why I did it that way. Okay, so it just kind of looks continuous. All right, and then we have a branch, okay, colored it using the same colors of Stampin' lenses I used on my nest. But we have to pop this up, right, because it needs to catch our easel to hold it. So I'm going to bring in my mini dimensionals. We're going to add a couple of whole ones, and then we're going to do some trimming. So we'll go one whole one there. I think I can squeeze one whole one in there. And then what I like to do is either take the edge of my mini dimensionals, cut them into smaller little strips. They're a little bit narrower. And then bring in my take your pick. Pick these guys up and pop them on. Okay. This may seem kind of fussy, but it really isn't too bad, especially if you take your backings off first. Where'd that one go? That one stuck to my finger. There it is. If you take your backings off first, they're pretty easy to maneuver into place. So we'll just pop this one off, and that's going to go right there. Okay, so now we have all of our mini dimensionals. So to adhere this, I'm going to open up my easel. I'm just going to kind of push it back to where I want it to anchor. All right. Then I'm going to bring in my branch. I want to bring it up just underneath where that easel is going to catch and just press it into place. And there we go. Done. You like? I thought this was kind of a fun little fold. So here we go. Let me bring back my all 3 cards from today. And then I'm going to show you a couple more that I put together. So quick and easy birthday card. The strips, I think Louise would make it, they're a little bit thicker than dimensional, so it would add a lot of thickness to the card, because remember, this is on the inside of our card. So I think it would make it just a little bit too thick. Yeah, it's a good thought though. So here is a really simple birthday card using some of our fabulous Country Gingham DSP, beautiful spring card. Here is another one. So I went a little crazy with my nest and my leaves, had a little fun, and I used part of that detailed nest with some leaves to decorate my sentiment label on this one. And then here's another one. I thought, how perfect for a Mother's Day card to have a mama bird and her babies, her eggs, soon to be hatched babies. So I made a Mother's Day card with this one as well. So lots of possibilities with this bundle. And like I said, the artwork imagery is just gorgeous. So check it out if you are looking for some ideas for spring projects or something a little different, something not flowers for spring, right? So there you go. Hope you enjoyed these, everybody. Thanks for joining me this week, and I will see you next week for another episode of Tuesday Live at 5. Bye for now.